Oh, hello everyone. I hope you're all well. I hope you're living the life that you want to live. I hope you're being kind to yourself, looking after yourself, looking after your family and friends, looking after your dogs, your putty cats, all the animals that you've got, anyone's animals, any animal on the street for that matter. Being kind to strangers, just being kind to people in the world, just to make this world a better place. Today I thought I'd do one on XRP, liquidity provider. How long does it take for something to become mainstream? Now, I've got a couple of computers, so my main big screen's here and the recorder is here. So please forgive me. It's just that I'm going to be looking over here. So I hope you don't mind about that. But I just thought this was important because often it does take more time than what people are prepared to wait. And what I mean by mainstream is when literally the populace, say 50% of the world population, knows the product. So what I mean by that is, say, for example, most people know Facebook. Most people in the Western countries or the G7 countries know Netflix. Most people will have a TV, for example. Most people know the United States. So you get my drift of what I'm saying here. So let's have a look at this. If we go forward and we go to the next slide. Whoops, sorry, just went over the slide. If you have a look at how long it does become mainstream, you have a look at this chart here, and I thought this was a very good one. It was from Statista, and effectively it just tells you how long it's taken for people to actually, to have websites on the web, for example. Now, the web basically started in 91 or 92. Hardly anyone heard about it. It took a long time. I remember the internet coming into Australia, on the dealing desk, as I said, around, look, it probably was 94, 95 or 96 or something like that. We just thought it was, we just didn't think it'd be anything that you could use. We just didn't know, we couldn't remember www or anything like that. We were just hopeless dealers at that stage. And it's taken all those years, literally from 1991 to right through to now, becoming mainstream, literally, where there's, again, 1.71 billion or more. Now, that's obviously, the world's around 7 billion. So, that's, say about 30% of the world population, roughly. And it's taken all that time. Now, I've always had the argument that because the internet, the website, was the most substantial thing that anyone's ever going to use, because it basically linked us all to the rest of the world, that would have taken a long time to get mainstream use. So anything that's come after that has actually had a quicker spread of mainstream use. Okay, so you understand what I'm saying. So say, for example, Facebook, which we know has roughly, and if all the accounts are right, if they're all real, 2 to 3 billion accounts out of a world population of just over 7 billion. Okay, so again, huge mainstream. Now, Facebook came in 2004, and so, in less than 15 years, they've got mainstream usage. Okay, forget about China, because they have their own, I think it's WeBook or something like that. But again, if China had to use Facebook, it's more than half the population. They've got a population of nearly 1.4 billion. So say we look at, even Instagram, which, I've only just heard about in the last year or so. But you see the timing now is getting shorter and shorter for mainstream, if you see what I'm saying. So Instagram, I would have heard probably in 2017. I don't have children, but I've got friends that have children. I've got nephews and babies and all that sort of business. Not me, but my friends. And so Instagram, which is what the younger kids are using, I think that's sort of come into its own probably in about 5 to 6 years. So you get what I'm saying here. For things to become mainstream, it often takes, in the past, it could have taken literally 15 to 20 years according to the past. But now, because we have the internet, we have websites, we have, all sorts of different search platforms on the website. Like we used to use a search platform called Netscape in my day. Hardly anyone who uses that anymore. People used to use Internet Explorer. People don't tend to use those anymore. And we used to use them all the time, and Mozilla. So we'll go through the different history and the different products for you to get an understanding, because my point is, if you've been holding, say, an old coin for 2 years, or even if you've been holding, Bitcoin for 2 years, it takes time. Now, Bitcoin has been around, as you all know, since 2008, and it takes time. Ripple and XRP were around later, 2014. So, we can't expect, or 2012, or whatever it might be, we can't expect things to get to mainstream until, it's out there in the world, and it does take time. But what I'm saying to you guys is the time it does get to mainstream is getting shorter and shorter. So rather than 10 to 15 years that it took for mainstream, or even nearly 20, according to the World Wide Web, it's now taking probably about 5 to 7 years if we use Instagram as a proxy, or even something like Netflix, for example. So you get my main drift. Now, when you've read anything about XRP, they always talk about it being mainstream in 2025, okay? Which is 5 years, which I don't regard as a long time to hold an investment. Not at all. And certainly when you look at shares, it is not a long time to hold any investment. Okay, now when people get on there and they're looking at XRP or Bitcoin or anything every day, it's different if you're trading the stuff, but as an investment, it's a completely different view I have, completely different. Some people are saying, but I'm in my 50s. But look, the reality is, even if you're in your 50s, where are you going to get an investment that, could go, 450,000% up, right? Or 45,000% up. If you hold a bond for 5 years, you're lucky to get even 1%. If you hold a 10-year treasury for 1 year, 1.5%. If you hold a German bond for 5 years, at the moment, it's negative interest rates where you don't get a return at all. So you've got to put this in perspective, and you've got to look at it in terms of the relative value of other assets out there. If you're invested in the stock market, you might get per annum about 15 or 16 or 17%. At its best, 20%. Even over 5 years, multiply that by 5 years, that's 100%. But if some of these cryptocurrencies, if they expect to go where I expect them to go, we're talking about, potentially anything from 50,000% upwards. So, 5 years in my mind is not a long time to wait for a great investment. That's my view, okay? This is not investment advice, but this is my view. Now, if we go to share prices, Netflix, and I'll use that as a proxy of something like YouTube, because YouTube, is not listed anymore. It's a private company. Now, Netflix, wasn't very well known, but, going back to 2008, the share price is around $4, and this is in the height of the, the crisis, okay? And it has become more well known over the last 5 years, that's for sure. And the share at its high got up to $420. Okay, Google, again, Google wasn't a very well-known browser. I didn't hear about Google as a browser probably until 1999. And I remember my boss talking about it, and I was in treasury on the dealing desk. I'd never heard of Google, never heard of the browser. I have no idea what the price was in 1999. I probably don't want to, because no, I didn't buy any, that's for sure. He bought some, and he made himself a multi-millionaire because he had a brother that worked in the US equity market. He was very lucky. But I didn't think about buying Google at the time. I didn't even know what it was. And the first time I came across it was in 1999. And I'd only just started using it. But if you look at the share price, say, the middle of 2004 right through to now, this stock has gone from $45, around $45 to $1,204, and it's probably had a higher peak up around $1,250. Now, I don't know whether there's been share splits in that or not. If there've been share splits where they actually, issue more stock and reduce the price, and this stock could have been even higher than that. Okay, so, in those days, people weren't using Google. I was using Internet Explorer. I was using Expedia, which was even an older one. I was using, what else was I using? Mozilla. I wasn't even using Google Chrome, okay? This is way back in the 1990s, or even before 2000, before half of you people were born, okay? If you're 25, whatever you are, you weren't even born then, which is, I feel like an old bag, that's for sure, an old duck. So I just want you to be aware how long some things can take for mainstream. And if it is an investment, we need to be patient, absolutely patient. Also, another thing I will say is just because something is first in technology, it doesn't mean it's going to be the main technology used. Now, we saw that with spreadsheets, okay? Everyone in my day, going back, 20 odd years ago, we all used to use Lotus 1, 2, 3. Remember the old Lotus 1, 2, 3? And it took a long time for Excel to catch up because people didn't want to change from Lotus 1, 2, 3. We had it in the dealing room. We had all our information on all our economics, everything. And as dealers and traders, we didn't want to have to go to other spreadsheets. We didn't want to learn new technology. It was just a pain in the butt, seriously. So there was a lot of resistance to go to new technology, even in terms of spreadsheets, right? Now, you can understand banks having to change settlement systems and operation systems to go to new technology, or any corporation. Again, XRP and Ripple is not just a bank coin. It's a coin and technology for everyone. Everyone has a settlement problem and no one can settle instant cash like XRP and Ripple's technology can, which is in 3 seconds. So anyone that tells you out there in the big world of crypto, and there's a lot of people out there that are making serious money in crypto world, I'm certainly not. I make it with my trading, but that's about it. I don't get any commission from anyone else. I don't flog anyone's products. I don't go and tell you to buy the ledger. I don't tell you to go and buy, this coin or whatever it might be. I don't get commission out of it. I don't, go and, the amount of times I get people from, ICO issuers asking me to, say, hey, this is a great story. Please, can you sell it to your client, to you guys? I just say, no. I don't get anything from anyone. I rarely even get any tips from you guys. So if someone gives me a tip, it's like, if I get 5 XRP through Titbot, it's like, 5 XRP, $1. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So I do this stuff for free and I do it for nothing, right? Literally. I'm not like the other guys out there that do their own advertising, get paid for it on their YouTubes. The only money I get is from YouTube, and it's 150 Australian dollars a month. The reason why I do this stuff is to keep myself up to date with what's going on in markets with knowledge, because I'm a serious disciplinarian. I love the market and I do it to keep myself up to date. And also to tell the truth out there in crypto land, okay? Because I'm really tired of people that earn a lot of money in crypto land and are actually telling you the non-truths. They're actually not telling you the truth. Now, the technology of Ripple and XRP is for everyone. Everyone has a settlement problem globally. 7 billion people in the world, we all cannot get our cash straight away. And if anyone tells you the different to that, they must be living on friggin' Mars. That's all I can say. They are talking absolute garbology and living on Mars, okay? So let's quickly go to Facebook. I want to make this short, but it never seems to happen that way. Facebook, again, didn't come out until 2004. But if we go right even back to 2013, 2012, the stock was around $20 US. According to this, it got up to $220. Facebook owns Instagram, which has taken off in the last, 5 years or so. YouTube's privately owned, but they all had a lead time, right? Yahoo used to be listed, but it's not anymore, and it owns Alibaba and Yahoo Japan. I thought that was quite interesting just in itself. I thought I'd mention that. But, if we go to the next slide, I talked about, spreadsheets before Excel came in. We used to use years ago, maybe in the 80s, VisiCalc. Some of the old bags and boys out there might remember this. I certainly do. I remember SuperCalc. My God, SuperCalc was like a thing from the past, right? And then we went on to Lotus 1, 2, 3, and then we went on to Excel, right? Now, my point is, everyone thought, VisiCalc or SuperCalc would be there to stay. It wasn't. Lotus we thought was fantastic, but it wasn't there to stay, right? It took a while for us to go to Excel because we didn't want to move anything. There was resistance. But the beautiful thing with Excel is it had fantastic macro functionality for financial markets. It had DDE links, which are dynamic data exchange links, and you could put live data in from financial markets, whether it be from Reuters, whether it be from Bloomberg, whether it be from Thompson's, live financial markets data, and you could run anything. I mean, Excel was just so good, obviously Microsoft, right? And we all know about Microsoft and Bill Gates, okay? So my point is, just because something is more well known today, within, say, a 5-year period, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the most used crypto technology in the next 5 years. That's my point, okay? And I honestly believe that, yes, Bitcoin was the first, but in some ways it's old technology, back to 2008. We don't know when the cash is going to settle because of the miners and whatever. We don't know. Everyone knows it because it's a poster child, but eventually, it's like the banks. The banks are resistant to change and change of technology, which is a huge ask for the banks. It costs a fortune for them to do it. Their banking all day long goes for 24 hours non-stop. Imagine them having to change their technology. So there's no doubt there is so much resistance to that. Just like there was for us traders on the desk trading currency and bonds every day. There was so much resistance to us going from Lotus 1, 2, 3 to Excel because the market was moving all the time, right? And the only way, our settlements, operational, quantitative people could change our spreadsheets was literally rewrite them on the weekend in Excel, because that's the only way they could do it, because we didn't want to be stopped from trading and having this hassle of not being able to use our spreadsheets. You see what I'm saying? Unfortunately, with banks, you can't do that because banks, still operate on the weekend. They may not be open, but they're still processing lots of different information, okay? And it's a big, big thing for banks. So it doesn't surprise me that there is just so much resistance, okay? So let's go to the next one. Browsers. What browsers did we use in the olden days? I can go through so many lists here. Like I said, I remember using Mozilla. I remember using Internet Explorer. I remember using Netscape. I use Netscape all the time, right? It's back in 2000. I don't use any of those anymore. I don't use any of them anymore. I might, I'm now looking for new browsers because I don't use those anymore. Yes, I used to use Google Chrome, but I don't even use Google Chrome now. So what's happening now, I think with most people, and they're probably like me, I'm no different to anyone else, we're becoming more knowledgeable. Since 2015, I've become more knowledgeable about what sort of browsers I can use. So all of a sudden I've got the internet. It's 2019, it's 4 years, and I've changed my browsers, okay? Because I like Tor. I don't like the fact that people can see what I'm doing with my VPN and all this sort of business. Plus, I'm looking for faster browsers with no ads and all that sort of thing. The consumer will make a choice, okay? And I think as things become more well-known, the consumer will make a choice, particularly with their own money. The banks hold your money. The banks will hold your money for 3 or 4 days if it's domestic currency. If it's foreign currency, they'll hold it for any period, from 3 to 20 days. I've heard shocking stories about, even the same bank, and you transfer money from here in Australia to, to overseas, the UK, Westpac, and you don't get your money for 20 days. And they convert it, and you didn't want to convert it, right? So, and this is just the normal SWIFT process. Yes, we read every day that SWIFT, is basically trying to make their process quicker, but it's for the big corporates and the banks themselves, and it's not operational, because the reality is a lot of people don't want to use SWIFT because it costs so much money, and it's an old legacy system from 1973. All right, so very quickly, again, the world population, this is from the World Bank, is growing all the time, right? 2019, 7.7, 2030, 8.5. So as the world population grows, it's just like houses. If population grows, you need more houses. As population grows, you need more bank accounts. You need more, there's going to be more use case for Ripple and XRP because, as time goes on, people require more and more, okay, and they become more educated, hopefully. Now we think that, Facebook's got roughly, if you believe the figures, around 4 billion users. I've seen anything from 2 to 3 to 4, okay, if they're real users. And that's massive out of a global population it is. And it's massive when you think that WeChat, which is the Chinese Facebook, has all its users on that. Okay, so the next thing is we go to, and I like this guy, Travis Kling. we go to foreign currency. This fellow is spot on, actually. He said, we have thousands of years of history of world reserve currencies, and they do have a shelf life. The technology available today, the banks and people and whatever and governments cannot get rid of. It's just a matter of time. If you look at the foreign currencies over history, and history does repeat itself, they only have a short shelf life, okay, really. And if you look at the US, that shelf life has come, right? So let's have a look at that. I really like this, so thank you very much for that, Travis. Portugal had a shelf life of 80 years in the 1400s or so, 1450 to 1530. Spain, shelf life 110, okay? Period in Netherlands, shelf life of 80 years. You know, that's with the Dutch East India Company, and they're everywhere, right? Indonesia and Suriname and the like. France, a shelf life of 95 years. We saw Britain, the UK, have a shelf life of 105 years. We saw America, they've got it to 2030. But, you know, if you said, right, it's 2019 now, you know, it's 100 years, right? Take it, you know, it's 100 years, and on average, the shelf lives are about 100 years. The US currency, you know, will not be the main currency in my mind going forward. We're seeing this already with, you know, China trying to build its own cryptocurrency before Facebook does. You know, Russia will start doing it. They want to deal outside the US SWIFT settlement system for cash, okay? Because the US can place embargoes, currency control on China and on Russia and on any other country in the world like Iran, where they can stop those countries from accessing their US dollar accounts, okay, through the SWIFT system. So with cryptocurrency, the US cannot do that, so it doesn't become political, okay? If those governments use cryptocurrency, the US cannot impose their rule on those currencies, being Russia or any other country, Iran or whatever it might be. So if you go by history, the foreign currencies do have, you know, just a short term. They have, you know, and I'd say, you know, 100 years, you know, over the history of humans is probably fairly short term. And, you know, America's, you know, the US dollar is declining. And we've seen that, you know, US dollar declining against the yen constantly declining in the big trend of things. And I honestly believe the US dollar going forward will decline below 100. And I've said that in other YouTubes. So, you know, history is always the same. Humans are always the same. And because we have this incredible technology of cryptocurrency, the banks and the regulators will not be able to stop it. That's for sure. And you certainly have Christine Lagarde from the IMF. I know she's resigned and her day is up very soon, about the 14th of September, saying that cryptocurrency is incredible. And she's mentioned Ripple and XRP. Now, she's going to be, and she's one of the most powerful women in the world, she's going to be the European, you know, she's going to replace Mario Draghi, okay? She's going to be literally the big boss or the president or whatever you want to call it, the governor of the European Central Bank, which is one of the most powerful and highest positions in Europe. And she is very pro cryptocurrency technology, okay? We're to go to the next one, and I have mentioned this before too. You know, XRP could replace the US dollar because, you know, all the big, you know, the World Bank knows about them, the International Monetary Fund knows about them, the US Federal Reserve knows about them, the regulators know about them, and the authorities know about them. And lots of different financial institutions, not just banks, but providers of foreign currency, corporates, know about XRP. XRP is a liquidity provider, does create liquidity, can literally help give liquidity to countries in Africa that are so poor that their currency is worth nothing, to create a multiplier effect so that growth domestic product increases. If growth domestic product increases, employment increases. If employment increases, taxes increase. If employment increases, consumers spend and create demand in the country, and again, create demand for work. You see what I'm saying? So, XRP has that ability, right? It's not aligned to a government, to its balance sheet, to its politics, okay? Now, governments have balance sheets which can be in massive debt, and we've seen that. Every G7 country in the world just about has massive debt, in their balance sheet, including Japan, including the US, including Germany, whatever. I've done YouTubes on that as well. I've done so many YouTubes for you guys for nothing. And honestly, what I tell you is fact. It's not garbology. And, XRP is the liquidity provider. It has no credit risk. In other words, well, technically speaking, it has 3.5 seconds of credit risk. Price risk, 3.5 seconds. Price risk, 3.5 seconds credit risk, 3.5 seconds of settlement risk. Where, a currency, US or anything else, can have settlement risk, up to a month, can have price risk up to a month or more. Massive price risk compared to XRP, and credit risk. If you have to wait to get money from someone for 20 days and they're going broke, and you've got to wait for 20 days, you run the risk of not getting the money at all, right? But if you only have to wait for 3.5 seconds to get your money, right? 3.5 seconds compared to 20 days, you know what I'm saying, right? It's very clear. Right, so this fellow said, and I like this guy as well, thank you, XRP patient. Last time it took 5 years of hodl for XRP to moon. Most of us only held XRP for only 2 years. Good things come to those who hodl. Now, he's right about this. As I said, with the shares and, new technology, it took initially 19 years, right, for mainstream, which then closed, and then we saw Facebook, then it was 15 years, then we saw YouTube, then it was 10 years. Then we saw Instagram, 6 years. You get my drift, right? So for it to become mainstream, it's getting shorter and shorter, right? But this fellow is exactly right. It took 5 years, and, it may take another 5 years. But if you read Ripple's information, look at their escrow, look at the facts, look at the client base, a price of anything can only go up when the mainstream knows about it. And I mean the populace out there, the people out there, the sheep, right? Because not many people know about cryptocurrency anyway. Until you can go out there and the mothers clubs are talking about cryptocurrency, just like Facebook, and they've all got Facebook, that's when I'm talking mainstream. And mainstream will take, 5 years, right? Absolutely. But with mainstream, you have a reduction in supply. That escrow of 50 billion is nothing. When we look at the $1 trillion problem in the world that Ripple is fixing, right? And fixing today. 50 billion is nothing. And if people think 50 billion is a lot, I can assure you it's not. It's not. It's not. I used to manage a book when I was a Queensland Treasury Corporation of 17 billion. 50 billion is nothing. And I was a 25-year-old when I did that, managing the state finances, okay? And the book was like nearly 20 billion, right? So it's not a lot of money, right? And again, when we look at one of Ripple's XRP clients, look at the reach, man. MoneyGram, they're in 198 countries in the world. Look at all these clients they're talking to, or the clients they're dealing with. This reach is unbelievable. Clients bring clients. MoneyGram is like a broker. They have all this client list, and all these clients bring more clients and usage. Clients bring usage of XRP. More clients bring more clients. One client, and look at the reach Ripple and XRP have with one client. Amazing. The technology of blockchain is not going away. Just like Excel wasn't going away when we were using Lotus 1, 2, 3. There's so many other things like, Reuters used to be the financial markets data system. Reuters, had monopoly over all the financial markets trading systems, right? And there was Thomson's and Others I can't remember now. But, you know, there were so many of them. And now Bloomberg has taken them all over, right? You know, with better technology, such much better technology. Yes, Bloomberg was so much more expensive, you know, and for years, the banks and the fund managers and everything else didn't want to get Bloomberg in. But they found they had to because their competitors were using Bloomberg. And if they didn't use Bloomberg, they were behind the A curve. You know, they were losing money while everyone else was making money, okay? One thing for sure, you can't stop progress, and governments or banks or anyone else cannot stop that incredible technology. Again, going back to global liquidity, I'll make this short because I always seem to go way too long. Global liquidity, according to this, you know, is 125 trillion US global liquidity. World GDP, according to this, is 80 trillion, okay? Again, this is a settlement issue. It doesn't settle within 3 seconds. Bitcoin cannot solve the global liquidity issue. No crypto technology can settle within 3 seconds, the way Ripple does with all the different foreign currencies out there, okay? And there's, I think, well over 300 different types of foreign currency pairs or more. You know, foreign currency, and then there's thousands and thousands of different pairs, if you know what I'm saying. So, you know, I got this from, you know, Boston Consulting. Again, they're just talking about asset managers, 74 trillion. Every asset manager has a problem with not being able to settle instantly. You know, unless you're Mike Arrington, who has his own fund, he uses XRP, settles 50 million US in 3.5 seconds. Excuse me, and I think it cost him 30 cents, or maybe it was 3 cents. But you get my point, right? So the thing is, often the leading markets, you know, often when we have a new technology, the leading market is not the one that's going to be, you know, the mainstream later. And that's certainly my view, okay? So Ripple from 2025 to 2025 will be the standard and will be mainstream in my mind in terms of crypto adoption. That's as far, you know, I honestly believe that, and I do believe, you know, Bitcoin is old technology. This article from the Phoenix, I've mentioned this before, will be absolutely correct. Anyway, guys, that's always food for thought. It's what I think. I'm not giving you investment advice. It's just education. I hope you're all well, guys. Please do look after yourself. Be kind to yourself. Always be kind to yourself. Life is hard. Be kind to your family and your friends. Please look after your putty cats, your beautiful putty cats, your beautiful dogs. On my last YouTube, I had one of my, you know, YouTubers send me 2 dogs, Coco and Milky, and they were just gorgeous. They make me happy. Animal pictures make me happy. So if you'd like to send me a photo, I'll put it on my next YouTube. And please to look after yourself and look after just strangers in this world, just to make it a nicer and better place, because seriously, it's getting colder and more horrible. And I don't want to live in a world like that. You know, I refuse to. Okay? All right, guys. Talk to you very soon. Thank you. Turn this off.